But like, if I die tomorrow, I know I would go with a smile on my face. I know I haven't wronged anybody, and keeping your sanity, it's not easy, man. And when you try to explain it to people, more often than not, they don't get it, and then it's just it becomes the individual journey.
Y'all, it looks like the feds just leaked a flash drive tied to Malcolm Jamal Warner, and it wasn't just random files. It held names of politicians, media moguls, and Hollywood insiders that elites allegedly fought for years to keep hidden. But here's the part that just doesn't add up. Malcolm wasn't the one with the enemies in these circles, yet somehow he was silenced, while people with everything to lose stayed in the shadows. And once you see how far this allegedly went to keep that drive buried, Malcolm Jamal Warner's story starts looking less like gossip and more like a cover-up. Okay, y'all, let's really talk about how sketchy this story of Malcolm Jamal Warner's death is, because the timeline straight up doesn't add up. When the news first broke, headlines everywhere said he drowned while swimming with his 8-year-old daughter. Some outlets even reported that surfers spotted him and the child struggling in the water before pulling them to shore. But then, just a few hours later, that story started getting corrected. Suddenly, officials claimed that Warner had been swimming with a male friend, not his daughter. Supposedly, the little girl was just playing on the shore while he and his friend got pulled under by the rip current.
Police officers still on the scene, standing behind the yellow caution tape. This is the beach where the unspeakable tragedy occurred, sparking headlines, grief, and shock. Costa Rica Emergency Response Director Wagner Leiva's team got the 911 call from Playa Cocos Beach at 2:10 p.m. on Sunday afternoon. Upon arrival, they found 2 males pulled from the water, he says. One they saved. But Malcolm, despite their best efforts, showed no vital signs and was pronounced dead on the scene.
And then boom, yet another update rolls out. Warner actually went for an early morning solo swim before sunrise, and that's when he disappeared. So which one is it? With each update, it felt like they were rewriting the script, trying to cover up holes. And y'all, when stories flip this many times, it usually means somebody's trying real hard to control the narrative. And that's exactly why the next detail made people pause even harder, because while the media has still been scrambling to rewrite the timeline, reports quietly revealed that Malcolm Jamal Warner's wife wasn't even in Costa Rica when it happened. Just listen to how this was reported.
Moments before the Cosby Show alum died in an accidental drowning off the coast of Costa Rica, July 20th, police confirmed to ABC News that he had been swimming with his 8-year-old daughter. According to authorities, surfers noticed the father-daughter duo struggling and dove into the water to help.
So here's the kicker. Insiders say that Warner's family later released their own version, saying he went for a solo sunrise swim near their resort, never returned, and was later found unresponsive near a rocky coral area. Now, I don't know about you all, but 3 different versions of the same story in less than 24 hours? That's not just sloppy reporting. That feels like something being deliberately reshaped. And if Warner really was carrying explosive info on a flash drive, messing with the timeline of his death might be the first step in keeping the truth buried. But this is where things get even creepier. The only reason we even know half the details of what went down in the Playa Grande that morning is because of one doctor who just happened to be on vacation and came forward. And the way he described it didn't just sound like your average drowning. The anonymous doctor said he was about 200 meters away when he first heard people screaming for help. He apparently grabbed his surfboard and sprinted towards the chaos. He paddled out through choppy, dangerous waves and finally spotted what he called a shadow beneath the surface. The shadow, Malcolm Jamal Warner. Now pause right there. If Malcolm Jamal Warner was struggling in the water with his daughter or with a friend, wouldn't people on the beach have noticed 2 or 3 bodies? Wouldn't there be more chaos? Yet this doctor only talks about spotting Malcolm Jamal Warner's body. And here's the thing, the doctor wasn't the only one. According to reports, 2 tourists who were also doctors rushed in to help with Malcolm Jamal Warner when he was brought to shore. Between them, they performed CPR for what eyewitnesses said for 45 minutes straight.
Per ABC News, a volunteer lifeguard pulled Warner to shore where he was given 45 minutes of CPR. In addition to Warner and his daughter, a second man received treatment at the scene and was later taken to a local clinic in critical condition.
Think about that. 3 doctors, trained professionals, working together with defibrillators once the Costa Rican Red Cross arrived, and they still couldn't revive him. And that's unusual because most drowning victims, if reached in time, have at least some chance of revival, especially with that many medical hands on deck. But Malcolm Jamal Warner, nothing worked. Like something else was at play beyond just a riptide dragging him under. Then this detail paying attention to it while Warner was pulled in lifeless. Reports say another man was also dragged from the same water. He was in critical condition, treated at a local clinic, yet after that single mention, his identity and condition disappeared from the headlines. Red Cross confirmed it, but media outlets barely touched it. Almost like someone wanted to erase the second victim from the narrative. Don't forget, there were no lifeguards on duty that day. Underground lifeguards later admitted that they hadn't been patrolling the beach due to lack of resources. So the only people available were random tourists and this one vacationing doctor who by chance happened to be right there at the exact moment Warner drowned. Too convenient? You tell me in the comments. So now the story's got more holes than some Swiss cheese. No lifeguards, multiple conflicting versions of events, a mysterious second man, and a group of doctors fighting to save Warner with 0 results. And that's when it hit me. If even the rescue story has holes, then maybe this wasn't just some tragic accident. Maybe Malcolm didn't drown. Maybe someone wanted to make sure he never left that beach alive. And when you connect that to the whispers about what's on that flash drive, it starts to feel that drowning was just the cover. The real question is, who was trying to shut him up and why? But get this, y'all, Malcolm was excited for that trip. You could literally feel it in his energy. There's even a clip floating around of him on the plane when they landed in Costa Rica, and he's grinning, cracking jokes, and just waiting to step out on the water. That's not somebody who's stressed or planning something dark. That's a man looking forward to whatever's ahead. And you can't fake that kind of energy. But here's the part that doesn't sit right. Not even a few days later, they hit us with the storyline that he accidentally drowned. Like, how does someone that hyped, that full of life, who could actually swim, just vanish in the water like that? And fans online were picking up on the same thing. One even said, something so extra dark about dying on a family vacation. He looks so good and happy here too. Especially when people close to him say he was actually a strong swimmer. To me, it feels way too neat, almost like a cover. And that's where the whole flash drive thing comes back into play. Because this trip, it wasn't just about sipping cocktails on the beach. Malcolm Jamal Warner had something with him. That same secret flash drive that FEDS later leaked after he was gone. And from what insiders are whispering, that drive wasn't just some random notes. It allegedly had names, dates, receipts, the kind of stuff that could rattle those so-called untouchables. So now put the pieces together, Malcolm lands in the paradise, all smiles, and maybe finally ready to let the world know what he's been holding on to. And then suddenly, he's gone. And the drive only comes to light after the FEDS get their hands on it. So you tell me, was this just coincidence? No, to me, it feels like the trip itself was the setup. The perfect stage to silence him before those files could blow the lid off of some powerful people. So now when I say that the reporting around Warner's death was messy, I mean it was a whole circus. Every outlet had a different version, and instead of clearing things up, the updates just made more people suspicious. But then things got downright disrespectful, and some outlets decided to reach out to Bill Cosby for a comment. Of all people, y'all. Cosby even compared hearing about Malcolm Jamal Warner's passing to him losing his own son, Ennis Cosby. Let me tell you, the internet wasn't having it. One person tweeted, "Nobody gives a ish what you have to say about anything. Your position as a caring person is forfeit." Well, that comment alone pretty much summed up the outrage at even letting Bill Cosby speak on Malcolm Jamal Warner's death. But others didn't hold back either. Another person wrote, "You also never stop being a vile creature. Rotten hell." But here's where it gets really dark, because once Bill Cosby's name entered the conversation, people started connecting dots. You already know the decades of allegations, the prison sentence, the silence in Hollywood, and suddenly Malcolm Jamal Warner's suspicious death wasn't just about what happened in the water anymore. It was about what he might have known. That rumored flash drive started looking a whole lot less like a random theory and more like a missing piece. And it wasn't just gossip, because people online began speculating that Malcolm Jamal Warner had evidence tied to exploitation of child actors in Hollywood. Evidence that he may have had stored on that very flash drive. One even said he knew too much about the of child stars and who perpetrated. That's what happened to him. And that would explain why the media narratives keep shifting, why certain people and powerful names wanted to control the story, and why the feds only leaked pieces of it after it was gone. And get this, Warner wasn't the only former child star connected to the Cosby Show who turned up dead that week. Another name, Louis Todaro, who reported dead on July 14th, just days before Warner. 2 child actors gone in 1 week. Coincidence? A lot of folks aren't buying it. So instead of the world just grieving Malcolm Jamal Warner in peace, his death turned into a full-blown media storm with conspiracy threads spreading like wildfire. And the craziest part, months before all this chaos, Warner himself was already talking about legacy, about wanting to leave behind something bigger than Theo Huxtable. His exact words? I'd say my proudest achievement is being able to have a post-Cosby life and post-Cosby career and still have my head on as straight as possible. So now people are asking, what was that legacy on the flash drive? And is that why certain elites made sure it never saw daylight while he was still alive? Here's the thing. As you probably know, Malcolm Jamal Warner wasn't just some actor living off of old fame. In the months before his death, he was reflecting deeply on his life, his marriage, his family, and the path he'd carved for himself outside the Cosby Show. What really stands out
At
now
night,
is that he
I
described himself
toss
during that
and
time.
turn.
He made it clear that he would leave this world knowing that he had lived with integrity, and that people who remember him as a good person. That doesn't sound like somebody ready to check out on vacation. It sounds like a man who believed he was sitting on something bigger than himself. Something he wanted to make sure was remembered. But these are the whispers about that flash drive. Word in the streets is that Warner has been gathering files related to Hollywood's hidden abuse of child stars, not just stories, but actual names, connections, maybe even recordings. Word in the streets says this flash drive was like an insurance policy, a way to protect his family if he ever got caught up in something ugly. But suddenly, him talking about legacy starts to feel less like nostalgia and more like a warning. Because Warner had always been vocal about protecting mental health, fatherhood, and independence in an industry that cheers people up and spits them out. He didn't just chase clout, he didn't play with the messy PR games. He moved with integrity, which makes it real easy to believe he might have been the kind of man to collect receipts, and real dangerous for certain people if those receipts never saw daylight. But if Warner was really holding on to a flash drive that exposed elite figures, that would explain the messy cover story around his death. It would make sense if the shifting reports, the sudden disappearance of the second victim from headlines, and even why federal agents inserted themselves into a drowning thousands of miles away. And here's the thing, not everybody bought the story that Malcolm just drowned. The moment the news of his death broke, people were already calling it suspicious. One person even said, sounded fishy from the start. Hope it gets investigated. Even his former co-stars weren't convinced. Remember Eddie? Yeah, you all probably know he and Malcolm Jamal Warner played best friends on screen and in real life. Eddie's always been deep into conspiracies. When he first heard the news, he shared a heartbreaking tribute. But later, he switched gears and came up with something that got everybody's attention. While speaking to his audience, he flat out said the drowning story was way too suspicious to call accidental. Listen to this.
I don't believe that man drowned. I don't. But they ain't fixed it. It's too suspicious. They had too many different stories.
But here's where it gets crazy. Some people think that Eddie wasn't just talking about the accident. They think he was hinting that Warner's death had more to do with what he was about to expose. You know, that secret flash drive the FEDS supposedly leaked? Because if Warner had files that could be taken down by elite figures, then his death being brushed off as a drowning suddenly feels way too convenient. So let's be realistic for a millisecond. People don't just vanish like that unless there's something deeper and bigger going on. And when you really start peeling back all the layers of Malcolm Jamal Warner's so-called accident, one question keeps popping up. Who actually gained from him being gone? Think about it. Warner wasn't just some random actor. He was plugged into circles where billion-dollar deals were happening. Their reputations were built on silence, and where the wrong secret getting out could ruin entire legacies. What really shook people wasn't just that Warner had a flash drive, it was the kind of leverage it presented. So if Malcolm Jamal Warner was really preparing to come forward with what he knew, or if he'd even hinted the wrong person that he was holding on to evidence, then his death suddenly doesn't look like an accident. It looks like a cleanup job. And here's the part that really gives you chills. Right after his passing, our insiders say that certain people in the industry got real quiet. Projects tied to Warner's name just disappeared, and folks who once called him family acted like he never even existed. That silence, that's fear. So again, who really benefited from this? The elites who got to keep their names out of the headlines, the powerful figures who didn't want their secrets exposed, and maybe even the same ones who the feds are now trying to corner, using Warner's lost flash drive as leverage. But here's the part that nobody can answer just yet. If the drive is real and the feds are holding it, does the truth ever see daylight? Or does it become another weapon traded in the shadows? Drop your thoughts in comments below, and then check out this next video.